Hi, this is Nola Speaks. I'm back again. I wanted to update you on the Empowerment Conference presentation since that video got like over 400 views in just a few hours. The Empowerment Conference is actually a model for providing survivors of child sex trafficking. Primarily, the conference model has been used on juvenile survivors, and so those under the age of 18, but we've also had some survivors join us that have been 18 or 19 years old. Let me say this first. If I only had 1 minute to talk about the conference, what would I say about it? Well, I would say that it is a life-changing experience for everybody involved. So the conference does involve both adults and youth because the adults are there for supervision and mentorship. And of course, the youth are there as attendees. However, both populations are equally as impacted. The adult audience or population that's attending usually includes probation officers, social workers, residential care providers, advocates, attorneys, so providers in the field. And then, of course, the youth are all victims or survivors of child sex trafficking. And, one of the outcomes of this conference is that it changes not only the lives of those victims and survivors that came to be empowered, but it truly also changes the lives of those adults that come to the conference. And I think, for those adults, the primary way their lives are changed is their perspective is significantly shifted. They're not used to seeing these children speak of their experience as being sex trafficked in terms of trauma and in terms of their past history of abuse and neglect. They're used to hearing them talk about it in a way that might sound glamorized or, that might sound like they're not impacted the way that they truly, truly are. So that being said, that's one thing I would say. Another thing I would say, if I only just had a minute to talk about it, is I would say that the Empowerment Conference model provides the opportunity to create a unique space for survivors and victims of sex trafficking on this planet. I've been through a lot, and I've been around a lot, and I've been involved in a lot, and I have to say that this conference is absolutely the most impactful thing I've seen around conferences, workshops, or best practices that are used with victims and survivors, specifically of child sex trafficking. So let's talk a little bit more specifically about some of the conference nuts and bolts. Okay, so first and foremost, the conference has an overall goal in terms of this model, and that goal is to reduce the number of both foster care youth and probation youth who have already been victimized by the commercial sex industry. So we're trying to reduce their re-victimization through empowerment, and that would be through self-empowerment. And then in addition to that, we're also helping to develop youth leaders. So that is our overarching goal of the conference. So our particular conference does focus on kids involved in the systems due to their high need, overrepresentation amongst the sex trafficked population, and the fact that our primary partnerships were with these public systems. However, you can have a conference model that includes any youth that are in need of this kind of healing and connection. Okay, so moving on to some of the objectives of the conference. And when talking about the objectives, I'll also talk about some of the activities. So the first objective is to foster an environment, essentially a community, that will allow meaningful connections to be formed between youth and supportive adults or mentors. So that is a key element of the conference because we don't just want the kids supported at the conference, we want them supported throughout the year. And we know that as most of their trauma has happened in the context of a relationship, as does their healing need to occur. So that being said, there's a few ways we achieve that. Well, one way we do it is we connect the youth at the beginning of the conference with an adult who will serve as their mentor throughout the conference and beyond. So they're connected with somebody that's local to the conference. We also have, we also have survivors there available throughout the conference to form relationships and speak with girls and just have really meaningful contacts and opportunities. And then lastly, we follow up with monthly empowerment events each month in the local area where Victims and survivors that attend these conferences, as well as the adults, can continue to come together on a monthly basis and build community. We do horseback riding, yoga, dance, singing. This upcoming Saturday, as you know from my earlier video, we're going to do self-defense and distribute back to school supplies. The second objective for the Empowerment Conference model would be to expose youth to adult, especially young adult survivors of commercial sexual exploitation who are currently in leadership positions either in their communities, their own lives, their organization. And so how we achieve this is we have a survivors panel where we have a survivor moderator as well as survivor speakers. And they speak a little bit about their story, but more about the tools that they use to overcome and to stay out, to build new relationships, to mend broken relationships, etc. And it's really unique for the attendees because they have the chance to ask the panelists questions such as, how did you get people to trust you again? What do you do when your pimp is the father of your child? And other questions that are very sensitive and that they would otherwise feel very stigmatized asking outside of that environment. And even if they did feel comfortable to ask the questions, who would they ask, right? So this is a very unique opportunity. We also have several keynote speakers throughout the conference, all survivors, that talk about different topics depending on, where they're at in their life with their healing, recovery, and with their own work. And we try to feature at least one author every year that's either a survivor or that has written a book about this particular topic. And the girls are provided with those books and they're able to get them signed and interact with the author. Last kind of component of this piece would be the fact that the survivors get to really connect with the girls to provide that connection and support so they can more intimately ask some questions about how they got into these leadership positions and kind of what it means to be a leader. So moving on to our third objective for this model, it is to provide the opportunity for creative youth expression as a form of trauma healing and trauma expression. And so, we know that youth do a lot of more traditional, maybe trauma practices like talk therapy. And we wanted to give them an opportunity to do something that was a little bit different. And so they engage in creative workshops in the areas of spoken word, dance, art, and this year we'll also be adding on singing. And they work with the creative artist instructor as well as with a group of youth, probably about 10 of them. And they create an art piece, a dance piece, whatever it is. And on the last day of the conference, we all become their audience, all of us adults, and the youth perform in their group, and it is awesome, and they love to do it, and what they come out with is just simply amazing. We call it their talent showcase. Okay, so moving on to our fourth objective is to teach youth to teach the youth valuable life skills that can reduce their vulnerabilities. So we have educational workshops by agencies that come up to teach those. And we also have a large group presentation that includes both the youth and the adults, a workshop that we can all benefit from. And so that goes really well, and they are able to acquire some really critical life skills. The fifth objective of the conference is to give the youth themselves opportunities to be in leadership roles. So we do have a role of a youth ambassador, and they are able to work to help with conference registration, conference planning and ideas, providing mentorship to youth that are attending the conference for the first or second time. And our vision was, we started this conference about 5 years ago. This November will be our 5th year. So there are some lessons learned, and I'll talk about those. But our vision was that by year 5, girls that attended the conference in year 1 would now really be taking over the conference, becoming the MCs and having much greater roles. So we're in the process of rolling that out now because we are in year 5, and several of our youth ambassadors that we've been developing for the past couple of years have come to the conference for all 5 years, or at least it will be 5 years this November. So that's really awesome. A couple of other things in terms of location. The first year we had the conference at a hotel, and while it was still really powerful, it wasn't the best case scenario. So the second year we decided to do it in a more natural environment. And so we ended up finding a place up in the mountains that's basically like a campsite where Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, church groups go up to, to camp out. It has cabins. It has the main, a dining hall. It has basketball courts, bicycles. So, it's a full service campsite. And so that's the location we have chosen to use since year 2. And it really works for us. In terms of supervision, if you're dealing with systems involved youth, especially those on probation, supervision is not that difficult because it is a very natural environment. And many of the kids do not feel comfortable just leaving that environment at night or even during the day. Now, if you're in a more rural area, then you have to be more creative, I guess. However, because we do have probation officers and social workers and residential care providers up there with us, it certainly helps with supervision. We normally take about 80 kids up. I think we could certainly do 100 and still keep the quality of the conference. And it's an equal number. I'm sorry, it wouldn't be 80 kids. It would be 80 people. But I think we could do 100 total. So that would be 50 kids and 50 adults, because we do try to have a one-on-one ratio with the kids and the adults. So that would be that. Let me think, are there any other little nuggets I can give you about this model? Well, let me just kind of give you a rundown of kind of the overall 2 days, and then I'll come back with maybe some more information later. So we get up to the conference the first day, and the first day we kind of want to break into it. So we do something fun like a scavenger hunt. And then we do a welcoming to let everybody know, how the next couple of days are going to go. And then that evening we'll have dinner and we'll have that survivor panel I talked about. After the survival panel, we want to give the kids sensory breaks. So all of these kind of fun activities you're going to hear me talk about, that's what we're aiming to do. We'll give the kids the opportunity to participate in karaoke, or possibly a dance party. And when we do a dance party, we bring the CD. We already have picked the music to make sure the music is not triggering or inappropriate for the girls. And the dance party, we have a pajama jam party. So we'll be in our pajamas. We'll get those little sticks that light up. So either that or we'll do the karaoke. And that's really just to give them a chance to get into a different space before they go in their cabins to go to sleep for the night. So they'll do that eventually, and they have cabin leaders and all of that. The next morning we have breakfast. We have a keynote speaker. And then after we have the keynote speaker, we normally will then go into workshops. And so we'll do some of our life skills workshops during the day to kind of get those out of the way. And then for the rest of the conference, we're integrating in the creative workshops where they're creating their pieces for the talent showcase. And then all intertwined in between that, we're doing keynote speakers. We're doing the large group presentation. Last year it was on reproductive health. We throw a campfire in there where we do s'mores. Many of the girls, it's their first time ever doing s'mores. So it's like a really amazing experience for them. Like if you haven't had a s'more, sorry to tell you, you haven't lived. We also do a scavenger hunt when they first get there. I might have mentioned that. We have basketballs up there. And so we have rec periods where we do basketballs. We do bikes. We have a photographer, but we have a rule. The girls cannot have cell phones up there for many reasons that are critical. And the photographer only takes pictures of individual girls or girls with the keynote speakers or other adult leaders. And then at the end of the conference, we give the girls those pictures printed out. And we also have like a slideshow of all the pictures to kind of like wrap up the conference. So a couple things to remember post-conference with this model is that the girls will be extremely open and exposed, which could be good and lead to more engagement in their therapeutic services, etc. But it also can have some behaviors maybe show up, and if they're not provided with the appropriate support and understanding, those behaviors can certainly be negative. So what we did was, besides connecting the girls with that one person, we gave them some instruction. So when we first come back from the conference that first week, try to check in with the girl each day. That next, maybe the next week, try to check in with her every other day. And this could be by text message, by phone, but really making sure that after the conference, we're supporting the girls. We also make sure that their placements are aware of that if they're in placements, and any adult that's going to be connected to them when they return home is aware about the experience that they had. And then some other fun things we do is we provide some trinkets. So the girls usually get a piece of jewelry every year, a bracelet or a necklace that has something that represents the conference on it. They get a hoodie with the conference theme for the year that they're able to wear up there and have with them for good. They get a duffel bag with the conference theme printed on it that they're able to have for good. And we make a nice program book with nice colored pictures of all of the keynote presenters. So if they want to reconnect with any of these people, they can, be able to remember them. And they get all of these things, when they're up there at the conference. And so it's really awesome. And I didn't even name everything, but just giving you some examples. The conference is usually about 2.5 days. I think it could easily be 3.5 days or